it's Zane Banks here, and today we're going to be looking at steel guitar bends. So the steel guitar is one of the most complicated instruments to play, and my brother is a steel guitarist, so I've had a bit of close experience with the steel. I can play it a little bit myself, but not very well. I think there's a lot of interest with playing steel guitar lines on the electric guitar because it sounds great, and we can sort of more or less do it. We can't do exactly what the pedal steel does, but that's all right. I think in order to come up with your own steel licks, what you really need to do, to know a little bit about theory, just about the major scale, the notes in the major scale, and to just understand a little bit about how the pedal steel actually works. Once you know that stuff, then it means you can be liberated from being a lick player, someone who is just, reliant on learning pedal steel licks from a magazine or transcribing them, and you can come up with your own pedal steel licks. And it's quite a useful thing to be able to do. It sounds great when you use them in your own solos. The thing to remember is a pedal steel has two necks. There is the neck that's furthest away is the E neck, and that's the neck that's used for country music. So it's also known as the Nashville neck or the bread neck, because it's what's going to pay your bills and put food on the table. And the neck that's closest to you is what's known as the C neck, and that's often used for Western swing. Then what you have is there are 8 pedals that are on the ground. The first 3 pedals are the ones which concern country music and us. So there's an A pedal, there's a B pedal, and there's a C pedal. And essentially what those pedals do is they raise different degrees of the scale. So as I said, the open strings more or less give you an E9 chord with a major 7th in there. I'm not going to get too focused on how a pedal steel's tuned, but the pedals raise your tonic up to the 2nd or the 9th, okay? One raises your 3rd up to the 4th, and one raises the 5th degree up to the 6th. So you kind of get all the different notes in the major scale because the open strings give you the 1, the 3, and the 5. Then you have knee levers, which lower certain things as well, but we won't worry too much about knee levers. So once you know that, it means that you can it's like getting a leg up. You're playing a major scale, you need to go from the 3rd degree up to the 4th degree. A pedal gives you a leg up to the next note, like what a B bender does. And that's essentially, the technology is the same. So if we take that with a major scale, let's just stick with C major, it means that you can bend from any note to the next note. You just have to know, either with your ear or theoretically, what the next note is going to be. So if we have the B string, for example, there's a C. The next note up would be a D. In theory, we can bend to that, but good luck trying to bend the 1st fret of the B string. The next note after the D is going to be an E. We can bend it. That sounds cool. Then we have E. The next note is going to be an F, so we can bend, but that's a semitone. Then we're going to have an F. The next note is going to be G. Then the next note after that is going to be an A. Then the next note up from A is going to be a B. And then from B we get it back to C. But I hear you say, it doesn't quite sound like a pedal steel. And you're not wrong. It's because pedal steels most often bend while holding at least one other note. Okay, it's quite a different concept of bending to what we're used to when we play blues and rock, where we just play single lines. So what we're looking at here is most of the time we're going to be holding a note, usually an upper note, which remains static while we bend a lower note from one pitch up to a new pitch and then back down. We can also pre-bend as well. And it's what's known as oblique motion in classical music, where one note remains constant and another one moves. Classic example would be that first one that we looked at where we had the D, the first bend we did. That is the 9th degree, and it wants to go up to the 3rd. Harmonically, we're hearing that resolution. So if we held the 3rd fret of the high E string, that gives us the 5th, right? So now we're going to bend up to 2/3 of a C major chord, that getting the top 2/3. It also sounds cool when you move the top note, but you're not bending, right? So I would go from the 3rd fret to the 1st fret, so I get this like that. Now I can take these ideas and move them all across the guitar. So I could move up to the next position and bend from the third of C, which here is on the 5th fret. I can hold that next note and keep a constant G, and I'm going to go from a very beautiful sweet note to a slightly dissonant one. So you can kind of go down in thirds and just bend a note. We could have, if we're going from C all the way up here, we could go. Apologies about that last bend there. Ray Flack does a lot of this kind of stuff. So does Jerry Donahue. And when it's fast, you get this nice sort of... You have to be very careful with your bends to make sure the intonation is... I find at really fast tempos, it's better to have the note pre-bent and let it drop down. So play the top note. That's another one. If we look at, say, for example, the notes that a pedal steel player actually bends most, they are the third, bending up to the third, you get a lot. Also from the 5th up to the 6th. So if we hold our pinky on the 8th for the high E string, that's the tonic, that's a C. Ring finger would now be on the G, which is the 5th, and we're going to bend up to an A, which is the 6th. And then we could bend the G. That's like a really common steel ending. C in the bass. And you can move things around, so you could go. You can also invert things so that the bend is on top and the static note is underneath, and it gets a sweeter sort of bassy sound where we have things like, here is that G that I was holding before, and I'm going to bend the third up to the fourth. I go down this scale. So you have to have quite a bit of finger strength to bend this stuff and make sure it's perfectly in tune. Also to hold some of the things like holding that perfectly in tune. It's going to take it out of your fingertips for about a week or so, and then you'll develop the sort of strength and just the finite ability to tell if you're in tune. Your ear is always going to lead you. So this is essentially the theory behind pedal steel bends. So you could just come up with your own licks. You could just come up with a simple melody and see whether or not you can bend one of those notes. You can bend 2 notes at a time. It's quite tricky. You could bend thirds like... That's not easy. It's more common to get the individual note bending. But they can be used, they don't always have to be in slow tunes like this. It doesn't have to be ballads like this. You can get it with more of a chicken picking thing. So forth. So look, just be patient with it. By all means, learn any pedal steel licks that you find in books or on records. Study them and really look at like what note is being held. Chances are the note that's being held is going to be a very stable note in the chord most of the time. And the note that is being bent is an unstable one going to a stable one. Or sometimes it will be a stable one moving to an unstable one because you intentionally want to create a little bit more drama in your music. But just try and work some out yourself. Most of the time, they're either going to be on adjacent strings or they're going to skip a string. So it'll be like your A string and your G string, or it might be your B string and your E string. That's a very common one. Sometimes it will be the G and the high E, but rarely it's anything that spans, 2 strings, where it'd be like A and B. It's just too far apart. So look, practice this slowly. And I'm going to put up a couple of like steel licks and I'll break them down and explain what's happening harmonically and how I do it and how it works in a particular key. But hopefully this is a good introduction as to how pedal steel guitar playing is emulated on the Telecaster. I would advise you not to get too caught up in it. Like at the end of the day, a steel guitar always sounds better. And if you're playing in a country band, there will be a steel guitarist. So we are always just a poor imitation of an actual steel guitar, but it's a cool thing to be able to do and to emulate, and then to make it more of our own thing with a chicken picking sort of flavor to it. So please follow me, hit subscribe. You can find me on Instagram at the Rev Dr. Z, over at my Facebook page at Zane Banks. You can, there's a bit of a forum thing over there. Please make a donation to PayPal if you want to contribute to these lessons, and just happy picking. I'll see you guys next time.